You're watching a Hanford Communities issue briefing, highlighting important environmental cleanup issues at the U.S. Department of Energy's Hanford site in southeastern Washington, issues affecting citizens of the Pacific Northwest and the nation. The Hanford Communities organization was established in 1994 and is comprised of the communities surrounding the Hanford site, forming one voice to advise the Department of Energy on important transition and cleanup issues.
Hello and welcome to Hanford from the Highway, a driving tour around a once top-secret nuclear reservation. Even today, access to the Hanford site remains highly controlled. However, public highways that bypass the site offer a good opportunity to see some of Hanford's facilities and landmarks.
I'm standing along the banks of the Columbia River, one of the purest rivers in all of North America. It's fantastic for irrigation, for recreation, for salmon fishing, as many of the fishermen are doing today. Just behind me, by a few miles, is located a 600 square mile chunk of land that was secret at one site that was selected by the government in 1943 to produce plutonium, to build the world's first nuclear reactors, to build the world's first reprocessing plants. And it was here that plutonium was used both to end World War II and also to sustain our military might during the Cold War. When you drive to the Hanford site, you'll most likely come in crossing this bridge, which is called the Vernita Bridge. And just beyond the Vernita Bridge, there's a small rest stop that is a great location to start your tour of Hanford. First by seeing some of the geology, the basalt geology, the sediment geology that forms these hills. And also, when you look along the Columbia River from the Vantage Bridge, you'll see the first buildings, gray, windowless, monolithic structures. It looks like something from a past culture that are located along the river. These are the past nuclear reactors that once produced plutonium for America's nuclear arsenal. So this is a great place to begin your tour of the site, to understand the history, what cleanup is doing now, and where the Hanford of the future will be. Thank you. Come and join us.
Drive less than 1 mile east of the Vernita Bridge on State Route 24, and you'll arrive at a small gravel turnoff overlooking the Columbia River. Nearby, a rusted sign provides a brief history of Hanford. Across the river, you can see the abandoned Bruggeman Fruit Warehouse built before the federal government took over the land in 1943. You can also see B and C reactors. The tall chimney distinguishes B reactor from the silver metal roof protecting C reactor. B reactor was the world's first full-scale operating reactor built to create plutonium for making atomic bombs. 30 years after C reactor shut down in 1969, it became the first Department of Energy reactor to be cocooned, that is, safely sealed and placed into interim safe storage. 3 miles south of the Vernita Bridge on State Route 240 lies Gate 122A. This site provides an excellent overlook of the free-flowing Columbia River and 9 cube-shaped reactors along its banks. The K-East and K-West reactors were built in the early 1950s as the Cold War accelerated. These were Hanford's most powerful reactors. They were finally shut down in the early 1970s because the United States and the Soviet Union were decreasing their stockpiles of nuclear weapons. You can also see 2 basalt outcrops called Gable Butte and Gable Mountain. To the right is the waste treatment plant that is currently under construction. This plant will turn radioactive and chemical tank waste into glass through a process called vitrification. Waste treatment is scheduled to begin about the year 2020. Most of the glassified waste will be stored here at the Hanford site. Another vantage point to see buildings in the center of the Hanford site is found on Highway 240 near Milestone 5. Park your vehicle near the small gravel pullout labeled Gate 118A. From here, you can see numerous Hanford facilities. On the far left is the Central Waste Complex. Boxes and drums of waste dug out of the ground throughout Hanford are brought to these buildings to be characterized, sorted, treated, and when necessary, repackaged for on-site or off-site storage and disposal. For example, some of the waste is even being shipped to Carlsbad, New Mexico for deep underground disposal in salt formations. To the right of the central waste complex is the plutonium finishing plant known as PFP. Here, plutonium-bearing chemical solutions were transformed into hockey puck-sized chunks of plutonium metal that were used in nuclear weapons. In a few years, work crews will have demolished the plutonium finishing plant. Just to the right of PFP, you'll notice a decommissioned uranium reprocessing facility called T-Plant. This plant recovered the world's first significant volume of plutonium from irradiated fuel. You'll notice several light-colored buildings and large silver cylinders. These structures are part of Hanford's newest groundwater treatment facility. This facility pumps contaminated groundwater from beneath the Hanford site and treats it to remove a variety of radioactive elements and hazardous chemicals. Farther to the right, you can see U-Plant. This was the third reprocessing plant built during World War II. Though designed to recover plutonium, U-Plant was never used for that purpose because other existing plants performed so well that additional plutonium recovery wasn't necessary. U-Plant is scheduled to be the first reprocessing plant to be demolished at Hanford. To the right of U-Plant is the redox facility. Redox was a major technology advancement in plutonium recovery because it greatly reduced liquid waste generation, recovered larger amounts of plutonium, and could recycle used plutonium. To the far right, you can see the outer rim of the second new facility called the Environmental Restoration Disposal Facility, also known as ERDF. This double-lined landfill is regulated by the Environmental Protection Agency to accept mixed radioactive and chemical solid waste. Most of the waste is generated from building demolitions and soil excavations. Since its construction in 1996, this massive facility has received more than 10 million tons of waste. After looking at Hanford, turn around and look toward the open expanse of land called the Pfitzner-Eberhard Arid Lands Ecology Reserve, also known as ALE. Rattlesnake Mountain rises tall in this 120 square mile piece of land that forms the southwestern border of Hanford. This nearly pristine shrub steppe landscape offers scientists a unique opportunity to study potential environmental impacts from regional and global energy production. Depending on the season, between 150 and 700 elk live on ALE. These animals graze freely, so be careful when driving on State Route 240, particularly at night. On the way into Richland, you'll pass the B Reactor Visitor Center on Logston Boulevard. Buses depart from here, taking people to tour the historic B reactor. If you turn north on Stevens Drive, and just before reaching the 300 area, you will pass the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. Research in this national laboratory focuses upon scientific and technology discoveries in the fields of energy, environmental science, and national security. I'm standing in the southern portion of the Hanford site near what's called the 300 area. This is where the early research and development activities of Hanford were undertaken, and also, and perhaps most importantly, where fuel fabrication occurred, where uranium was manufactured into small fuel slugs, sent out to one of the reactors, and there the uranium was exposed to neutrons, and a small amount of the uranium was changed or transmutated into plutonium, the metal of choice for making nuclear weapons. Today, the 300 area is being demolished. All the facilities, most of the facilities are gone, as you can tell behind me, and each one of those facilities we can see the signs that used to be on the facility in those years past. The debris from those facilities was cleaned up from the 300 area, trucked out to the center of Hanford, and disposed in a landfill called the Environmental Restoration Disposal Facility. What the 300 area of the future will be determined by the public, the regulators, and the Department of Energy as we change Hanford from the past to future activities. If you continued on Stevens Drive, you will come to the Columbia Generating Station, a nuclear power plant operated by Energy Northwest. This plant can produce 1.1 gigawatts of electricity, enough to power nearly 1 million homes. On the other side of the road is the Fast Flux Test Facility, also known as the FFTF. The FFTF was built in the 1970s to test commercial reactor designs. The facility was shut down in the year 2000. If you turn onto Route 10, you will pass one of the most unique science facilities in the state of Washington. This is the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, or LIGO for short. The mission of this National Science Foundation research facility is to detect gravitational waves that originate from deep space, hundreds of millions of miles from Earth. Thank you for watching Hanford from the Highway. We hope you have enjoyed this program. To learn more about the Hanford site, please visit the U.S. Department of Energy's website at www.hanford.gov. Information can also be found on the websites for the Washington State Department of Ecology's Nuclear Waste Program and the Hanford Communities. The Hanford Communities website also has a link to the audio version of Hanford from the Highway that can be downloaded so that you can listen to the audio chapters as you drive around the Hanford site. You can also print a copy of the program that designates listening sites. We welcome your feedback on Hanford from the Highway video and audio programs. You can send your comments to hanford@ecy.wa.gov. This program was produced by the Hanford Communities in partnership with Lockheed Martin and funded by the Washington State Department of Ecology.